So, how to not miss out on your life when you have an autoimmune illness? Well, first of all, a little bit about me. I would like to connect with you. So, please try to find me on Facebook or Instagram if you don't already have me there. You find Dr. Tamara Western on Facebook or Instagram. And just you can search for that now, or it would be nice to meet all of you there. So, who am I? I'm a functional medicine practitioner, and I help women with autoimmune conditions to become empowered and reclaim their health. So, let's take a moment to really connect with everyone. So, can everyone please place your right hand over your heart? 3 deep breaths. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. 1, 2, in through your nose and out through your mouth. And 3, in through your nose and out through your mouth. So, I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, and I worked there as a doctor for a number of years in oncology and hematology at the San Fernando General Hospital. I found that experience profoundly rewarding, and it served my innate desire to help people. However, many of my patients had recurrences and succumbed to their cancers, as it would seem that surgery, chemotherapy, and radiotherapy are only part of the puzzle of chronic disease. I resigned from my position at the hospital feeling incredibly overwhelmed, exhausted, unable to catch my breath, and with the realization that the need for money was not enough compensation for the trade off. I did not know it then, but I was sick with an autoimmune illness. I was diagnosed with myasthenia gravis shortly after that and began a life-changing journey fueled by powerful influences. I've managed to control my illness, taking the holistic approach to health using the disciplines of functional medicine, naturopathic medicine, energetic medicine, source resonances, and applied kinesiology, muscle response testing. I practiced as a doctor, but now I've found a better way. I am the proof in the pudding. My journey has involved my re-education. I have completed the Applying Functional Medicine in Clinical Practice course by the IFM, Institute of Functional Medicine, and NutriHealth Foundation Advanced Part 1 and Part 2 courses on nutrition. I have successfully completed the muscle response testing, also known as applied kinesiology. I would like to become a certified practitioner of functional medicine with the Institute of Functional Medicine as I continue to evolve to better be able to guide you back to health. I've spent thousands of hours engaging in summits over the last few years, investing in my personal development and education in this approach to health. I qualified as a medical doctor at Pulaski University in the Czech Republic, but I do not practice medicine in the UK. And this summer, I'm continuing my training with an Institute of Functional Medicine's advanced practice module in environmental health. I struggled to wake up every morning. I felt as though a train had run over me. I woke up with severe pains in my neck, shoulders, and back. I had become a recluse, which was the opposite of my personality. I stopped taking phone calls after 1 p.m. I just didn't have the energy to deal with new people or old people. I had left my job, as I said before. Then I didn't get dressed for the day. I stayed in my pajamas all the time. I struggled to shower or brush my teeth, not to mention wash my hair. I was spending 12 waking hours in bed, needing to rest and take it easy, or lounging on the couch. I had become so dependent on other people. I couldn't drive myself around. My friends and family thought I was faking it, and it was all in my head. Every activity I attempted knocked the wind out of me. If I did yoga in the morning, I couldn't do anything else for the rest of the day. Trying to run my own business to sustain me was a considerable and constant battle. All the while, I was hiding and keeping my secret hidden to not attract pity or to come across weak or disabled in some way. But I was weaker and I was gaining weight and felt like I was losing myself, becoming someone whose reflection I didn't recognize in the mirror. I was lost. I had lost the zeal to live. I was too tired. I fell asleep at parties, anywhere, even in other people's beds. I missed out on one of my friend's bridal shower. I always had to excuse myself to go lie down because I just couldn't participate. I was missing out because of my autoimmune illness. Then I was fortunate to have had some key influencers who pointed my health in another direction. I was urged to go gluten free and dairy free and to see a naturopath. It also led to my discovery of functional medicine, and now my ability to help each and every one of you. Well, a little bit about functional medicine. The textbook of functional medicine defines it as the prevention, early assessment, and improved management of complex chronic disorders by intervening at multiple levels to correct health imbalances and thus restore functionality and health to the greatest extent possible for each patient. It's a biology-based approach that focuses on identifying and addressing the root causes of disease. Each symptom or differential diagnosis may be just one of many contributing to an individual's illness. A diagnosis can be the result of more than one cause. For example, depression can be caused by many different factors, including inflammation. Likewise, a cause such as inflammation may lead to a number of different diagnoses, including depression. The precise manifestation of each cause depends on the individual's genes, environment, and lifestyle, and only treatments that address the right cause will have lasting benefit beyond symptom suppression. So, the practice of functional medicine involves 5 essential components, which also set it apart from allopathic medicine. Number one, eliciting the patient's complete story during the functional medicine intake that attends to social determinants of health. So basically, you're really listening to what the patient is saying. Establishing a mutually empowering partnership between practitioner and patient that is free of bias. So here, we used to have the approach that the doctor's going to take care of me, the doctor's going to help me feel better and do things to make me better. It's about giving that power back to the patient. Actually, you have a role to play in making yourself better. And so this is this mutually empowering partnership. Identifying and addressing the challenges of the patient's modifiable lifestyle factors and environmental exposures. Organizing the patient's clinical imbalances and underlying causes of disease in a systems biology framework. So we're kind of returning to nature and the biology of human beings with this approach. providing personalized recommendations to guide the patient on their journey to improved health and wellness. A functional medicine practitioner behaves as a detective, exploring the clinical imbalances that provide rise to, to symptoms, then delving into the root causes, environmental factors, and genetic trends that affect your well being. This model can be compared to a tree. Imbalances are represented by the trunk, where the symptoms are represented by the leaves, and the roots are those dispositions to those illnesses. So here, if we look at the tree, I don't know if any of you have seen this kind of thing before. When we look at the roots, and this is what we mean about addressing the root causes, you can see things such as sleep and relaxation, exercise and movement, nutrition and hydration, stress and resilience, relationships and networks, trauma, microorganisms, environmental pollutants, really being at the root of your signs and symptoms, and then leading to different organ systems and traditional types of diagnosis. And in the functional medicine system, this is important. If we look at the trunk, there are 7 key areas of core clinical imbalances: assimilation, which deals with digestion, absorption, microbiota, GI, respiration; defense and repair, that deals with your immune system; energy, which deals with your mitochondria; biotransformation and elimination, which deals with how you handle toxins and how you detoxify; communication, which deals with your hormones and your neurotransmitters; transport, which deals with your cardiovascular and your lymphatic systems; and structural integrity, which deals with everything to do with your the musculoskeletal system and even like cellular membranes. So, how do you not miss out on your life when you have an autoimmune illness? First, we need to understand what is an autoimmune illness. So, an autoimmune disease is the result of your immune system accidentally attacking your body instead of protecting it. So, let's imagine your immune system as an army that must clearly distinguish friend from foe. Your immune system is made up of organs and cells meant to protect your body from bacteria, parasites, viruses, and cancer cells. And an autoimmune disease, as we said before, is the result of the immune system accidentally attacking your body. Autoimmunity occurs when this immune system becomes confused and our own tissues get caught in a kind of friendly crossfire. Our body is fighting something, whether that's infections, toxins, allergens, or a stress response. Somehow, that immune army redirects its hostile attack on us. Our joints, brains, skin, and sometimes our whole body become casualties. The whole concept is called molecular mimicry. Autoimmune diseases plague over 250 million people all around the world, and many more suffer from a wide variety of chronic inflammatory conditions. So, this is just to illustrate the wide range of autoimmune diseases and how it attacks all these different organs. There are over 100 known autoimmune diseases, and they can affect many types of tissues and nearly any organ in your body. In this masterclass, you'll learn strategies that you can take to reduce inflammation and heal your autoimmune disease. So, how are they all connected? While all of the above are different autoimmune conditions, at their root, they are all connected by one central biochemical process, a runaway immune system known as systemic inflammation, which results in your body attacking its own tissues. But inflammation isn't always bad. Acute inflammation is your body's appropriate response to infection or trauma. You've experienced a sore throat, rash, hives, or sprained ankle, but inflammation should do its job and then leave. The body's immune system attacks various proteins that are seen as foreign and potentially dangerous to the body. This includes things that really could be dangerous, such as bacteria, viruses, parasites, etc. But it can also include things that aren't dangerous to the body, such as pollen, dust, specific food particles, and our own tissues. In autoimmune disease, an overactive immune response and chronic inflammation can slowly wreak havoc, eventually leading to illness and rapid aging. Functional medicine provides a map to find out which molecule the cells are mimicking. It looks at the root cause of the inflammation and asks why that inflammation exists. If we can identify the underlying sources of inflammation, we can heal the body. The underlying causes may include stress, hidden infections, food allergies or sensitivities, toxin exposure, genetic predisposition, nutrient deficiencies, and leaky gut. If you want to cool off inflammation in the body, you must find the source. So our allopathic physicians are not usually taught to find underlying causes. They're diagnosed by symptoms and then they try to mask symptoms with medication. And that's how this approach is going to be different and how this approach can help you. So let's understand chronic inflammation versus autoimmunity. Chronic inflammatory processes and autoimmunity have a lot of similarity, but also some differences. Autoimmunity is usually associated with an overall chronic inflammatory process. However, one could have a chronic inflammatory condition without having autoimmunity. A chronic inflammatory process is when some sort of trigger, like pollen, food particles, etc., initiates a strong inflammatory process that causes collateral damage to other tissues of the body, such as the gut lining, blood vessels, sinuses, lungs, joints, etc. This would create conditions such as inflammatory bowel disease, heart disease, allergies, asthma, osteoarthritis, etc. And an autoimmune condition is when the body's white blood cells produce a specific antibody to target a particular tissue or enzyme within a tissue of the body. The big difference between the chronic inflammatory conditions and autoimmunity is that in the chronic inflammatory conditions, we have tissue damage resulting as an indirect effect of the inflammatory process, while in autoimmunity, we see tissue damage as a direct effect of the inflammatory process. Inflammation is at the root of practically all known chronic health conditions. Many autoimmune diseases are more common in women than in men. The diseases are common. 1 in 15 people in the US have an autoimmune disease. 50 million people are affected in the US, and it costs over 100 billion US dollars annually. 1 million people in the US have lupus, and 1.4 million have Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis. And in the UK, approximately 4 million people are living with an autoimmune disease. And the prevalence of multiple autoimmune syndrome, the incidence of 3 or more autoimmune diseases in a single individual, is also on the rise. And you could have latent or pre-autoimmune disease existing for 7 to 14 years before diagnosis. Around 25% of patients with an autoimmune disease tend to develop additional autoimmune diseases. So, autoimmune diseases are one of the top 10 causes of death in women in all age groups up to age 64. It's not contagious, some are genetic and run in families, but we'll talk more about what that actually means for you later on. So, what causes these autoimmune diseases? We've kind of touched on that already, but basically, molecular mimicry. And according to conventional medicine, the precise cause of autoimmune diseases is unknown or genetic. But molecular mimicry is one of the leading mechanisms by which infectious or chemical agents may induce autoimmunity. It occurs when similarities between foreign and self peptides favor an activation of autoreactive, TOB cells by a foreign derived antigen in a susceptible individual. What does this mean? It just means that you start making antibodies to things that, like proteins that are coming in through your diet or through exposure to the environment. And then there are some risk factors that may increase your chances of getting an autoimmune disease. We're going to go into that in a bit. But what's the problem with the current approach? Except for treating infections with antibiotics and treating trauma, medicine today approaches most disease by suppressing, covering over, blocking, or otherwise interfering with the body's biology. We generally don't attempt to seriously address the underlying problems that led to the disease in the first place. Conventional medicine often addresses autoimmune disease by powerful immune suppressing medication rather than searching for the cause. That's like taking a lot of aspirin while you're standing on a tack. The treatment is not more aspirin or a stronger immune suppressant, but rather removing the tack, right? So, according to the Institute of Functional Medicine, the risk factors which lead to the phenomenon of molecular mimicry are nutrition. These are macro and micronutrients, stress, antigens coming from food or gut, toxins, and infections. So let's go a little bit more into nutrition. With autoimmune diseases, the prevalence of specific food antigens as triggers is so common. As a frontline intervention, meaning a first choice, personalized nutrition can dramatically alter the disease trajectory while improving overall health. Food is information. Food promotes balance, encourages health, and stimulates healing. We need to eliminate these suspicious antigens. So, how can you personalize your nutrition? We can use the sway test to tell us more about the foods that you're eating. It's a really easy way to harness the power of your unconscious. The sway test was documented in 1964 by Dr. George Goodhart Jr., who introduced the world to applied kinesiology based on the scientific fact that your body never lies. In the 1970s, Dr. John Diamond applied it to test the positive and negative effects our thoughts have on the thymus gland, which, according to Eastern medicine, is the master controller of our life energy. It is used as a standard for chiropractors, nutritionists, and homeopaths who use muscle or energy testing to dialogue with the body. Muscle or energy testing is the response of our individual energy systems to the vibrations of certain substances, people, and even statements or thoughts that we make. Each person has a unique energy system, just like each of us has our own fingerprint. Our nervous system is about 60 kilometers long and functions like an antenna, which discriminates subtle frequencies. MRIs, EEGs, and CAT scans can give us some vital information, but for more subtle feedback, most holistic professionals rely on muscle testing. So, how can you do the sway test? First of all, it's going to be very quick. You can finish this in less than 10 seconds. You want to be sure that you're well hydrated with regular water. Well, not just regular, but filtered, but you know what I mean. Stand comfortably with your feet shoulder width apart, barefoot, flat shoes, no heels. Clear your mind of any thoughts. Be mindful. And it's kind of like getting ready for meditation or when you want to pray. That's the way you clear your mind. Then you want to say, show me yes to your body and observe the response. And it may rock slightly forward. You then want to say, show me no to your body and observe that response. It may take a second or two to notice the sway the first time. You can test it by saying, my name is, example, tomorrow. My name is tomorrow. And then you wait to see, are you swaying forward or are you swaying backwards? After you've established that forward is yes and backward is no. Then you can test or ask anything, even to false things. And you may need to repeat the question to get a consistent answer. This can happen when you're doing this for the first time. So you need to kind of do it a couple of times before you really get the hang of it, let's say. So how do you use this to test food items? So again, establish yes and no for your body in this moment. Hold a food item or a supplement or a beauty product in your hands. Calm your mind again. Then you want to say, this food item, like a banana. So this banana is good for me. Wait for a sway. It's usually kind of quick, 5 seconds. Note the direction of yes and no from before and compare the response that you've gotten to the item that you're trying to figure out. Banana, or you can also use supplements like vitamin D3 or K2, or, cosmetics like a lipstick. And it can really give you some insightful answers. So this is what it looks like, what will happen. So you may need a bit of support at the front of you and behind you if you aren't very stable on your feet, just to prevent you falling down. And we can use the sway test to help us identify the food items or beauty products or supplements that are suspected antigens. Antigens cause the antibodies to form in the body. Once identified, they need to be eliminated from the diet. So what else do we need to think about when it comes to diet? So for people with autoimmune illness, we really need an anti-inflammatory diet that's organic, non-GMO, unprocessed, very high in phytonutrients, that's all the nutrients we get from plants, and with low glycemic load. So it doesn't raise your blood sugar when you eat it by a very high amount. We need to address nutrient deficiencies and imbalances. And we can do it by assessing properly your nutritional status and then using supplements to supplement. you can also consider intermittent fasting and or a ketogenic diet. We'll go into it a little bit more. So, what were these macronutrients that I was talking about before? Those are proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. They provide structure and energy substrate for life. Yes, many areas of the world have seen an increase in the intake of carbohydrates, changing the ratio of macronutrients. Too much carbohydrate can cause altered metabolism, increased inflammation, and increased cytokine release. What does that mean? Very bad news for people with autoimmune disease. Adequacy of protein is essential for the maintenance of immune tissue integrity. Protein processing here, problems with protein processing can alter the immune response. Protein processing is a term used to include intake, digestion, absorption, transport, biotransformation, assimilation, and elimination. Malnourishment has been associated with impaired gastrointestinal immune integrity, and the lack of adequate protein increases gut permeability and changes the immune response. The balance of omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acid plays a pivotal role in inflammation and immune system communication. Also, the glycemic load can play a role on the effects of diet. So, a single high glycemic index meal can actually raise something called C-reactive protein in the blood. And now, micronutrients. So these are the minerals, vitamins, and phytonutrients that provide cofactors, adaptogens, and information mediating molecules that promote balance. So, inadequacy of both vitamin A and D is associated with the increased incidence of many autoimmune conditions. Curcumin, an example of a phytonutrient, has strong evidence for immune effects. Green tea, resveratrol, black cumin seed are also examples of phytonutrients. And daily reference intake, which was replaced by recommended daily allowance in the US and dietary reference values in the UK, that determine the minimum levels necessary to prevent diseases of deficiency across a population. We don't actually have clear standards to determine the optimal micronutrient status for individuals. And you can use functional testing to assess the need for a particular nutrient if a person is deficient. That's what I mean. Minerals, vitamins, and phytonutrients are key factors in wellness and illness and need to be balanced based on your ability to produce, process, absorb, store, and excrete them. Wow, this is really interesting. Some diet immune interactions. So, meals can have different effects on markers of inflammation and oxidative stress in obese versus lean women, for instance. For all individuals, high sugar and high glycemic meals trigger a low-grade inflammation. The resulting increase in immune triggering advanced glycation end products promotes inflammation and chronic disease, including autoimmune disease. Short chain fatty acids and trans fats are pro inflammatory, while omega 3 fatty acids are anti inflammatory. Hypoglycemia induces postprandial, which means after meals, and chronic low grade inflammation. Hypoglycemia, high blood sugar levels. Other food components, for example, vitamin C, vitamin E, and carotenoids, decrease the circulating concentrations of inflammatory markers. While not appropriate for all patients, supervised fasting, intermittent fasting, or induced ketosis may lead to improvement in symptoms from autoimmune conditions. This is because when you're fasting, when your body is fasting, it can induce autophagy, which is a process by which it tells certain cells that aren't functioning optimally, hey, it's time to die, time to kill yourself, please go. And it's like a housekeeping process of the body, but you don't get to do it if you're constantly eating. So that's why you need to have this period of fasting. And again, it's not safe for everyone. So you need to discuss that with your doctor or your functional medicine practitioner. This is just a really complicated looking diagram, but it shows the interconnection between autoimmune disease, inflammation, increased intestinal permeability, immune dysregulation, and dysbiosis in the gut. And then on the outside, all the other factors that are coming from diet, the environment, nutrient deficiencies that are pushing those processes of inflammation, increased intestinal permeability, immune dysregulation, and dysbiosis, which ultimately can drive autoimmune disease. How can you improve your nutrition? How can you supplement your nutrition if you have an autoimmune disease? So you can take a multivitamin and multimineral supplement. You need some omega-3 that has EPA and DHA inside. You can take probiotics, which has about 6 different strains of bacteria to the order of billions of colony-forming units. And you need some vitamin D3, maybe something like 5,000 units per day or more, depends. You should have that assessed, your vitamin D level, before. And I would just like to stress again that almost all the patients who have autoimmune illness have low vitamin D. And that doesn't matter if you live in a sunny country, because we don't actually spend enough time out in the sun, like at least an hour in direct sunlight without sunblock, to convert the enzymes and all of that we need to make the vitamin D hormone from the sunlight. Just to reiterate that supplements can be beneficial to supplement one's diet, not to provide the balanced diet. Nothing can replace or substitute a bad diet. No amount of exercise and no amount of supplements. And now going back to the next factor, risk factor for autoimmune disease, we come to stress. In 1936, Hans Selye defined stress as the non-specific response of the body to any demand for change. According to the NHS, stress is the body's reaction to feeling threatened or under pressure. When you experience changes or challenges called stressors, your body produces physical and mental responses. That's stress. Within limits, stress is a necessary part of health. Stress responses help your body to adjust to new situations. Stress can be positive, keeping us alert, motivated, and ready to avoid danger. For example, if you have an important test coming up, a stress response might help your body work harder and stay awake longer. But stress becomes a problem when stresses continue without relief or periods of relaxation. However, stresses test the capacity and resilience of the body, and when exceeded, dysfunction can manifest. When a person has long-term chronic stress, continued activation of the stress response causes wear and tear on the body.
The
The
body's
body's
autonomic
autonomic nervous system controls your heart rate, breathing, vision changes, and more. Its built in stress response, the fight or flight response, helps the body face stressful situations. And of course, we could talk all day about this as well, the vagus nerve and the overactive sympathetic system and how to activate your parasympathetic system, but it is outside the scope of today's talk. So, what can this stress be? I mean, when we normally think of stress as only psychosocial, but stressors can be diverse and at multiple levels, such as cellular, like in the case of cancer, environmental toxins like mercury and mold and medications and endocrine disrupting chemicals. Stress can be epigenetic in the sense of acetylation and methylation defects of your DNA and your genes. Genetic, so you could have these ApoE4 and THFR genes. Stress can be microbial. You could have dysbiosis, infections. Stress can be molecular, so interfering with neurotransmitter synthesis or oxidative stress. Stress can be nutritional, both macronutrient imbalances that we just talked about, like inadequate fiber or protein, and micronutrient imbalances, like selenium or zinc could be deficient. Stress is also on a psychosocial level. I think we're most familiar with this one. Belief systems, rule disruption, things like that. Also on a social level, like your culture, the economics. Acute and long term stress can be a factor both in the onset and progression of autoimmune conditions. So 80% of autoimmune disease patients reported uncommon emotional stress before the disease onset. So, how do you deal with your stress? So, psychotherapeutic interventions work by a variety of mechanisms that ultimately balance the sympathetic parasympathetic tone. They can be reduced as the patient's stress decreases, and these include things like cognitive behavioral therapy, hypnotherapy, interpersonal therapy, and so on. Then we have things like mind body therapies, which work by a variety of mechanisms that ultimately balance sympathetic parasympathetic tone. And this includes things like acupuncture, dance therapies, EMDR, journaling, yoga, etc. And adaptogens. Some of you may already know some examples, but we're going to go into them a bit more. One big one is ashwagandha. An adaptogen is a natural substance considered to help the body adapt to stress. And in the specific case of ashwagandha, it inhibits the conversion of cortisol, which is a stress hormone, to the inactive form of cortisone. So here I have a nice list: ashwagandha, cordyceps and reishi mushroom, holy basil, licorice root, panax, ginseng, rhodiola, schizandra, Siberian ginseng that you can start to incorporate in your diet. Another thing that we can take away from today's masterclass that will help you to deal with stress is tapping. Tapping is also known as emotional freedom technique. It's a powerful, holistic healing technique that resolves a range of issues. It's based on the combined principles of ancient Chinese acupressure and modern psychology. Tapping on these meridian endpoints while addressing the root cause of distress sends a calming signal to the brain. This allows you to feel relaxed and in control. So, how do you do this tapping? The basic tapping technique requires you to focus on a negative emotion at hand, or you're so worried about that, I don't know, project that you didn't complete at work or something work related. This can be a fear, a worry, a bad memory, an unresolved problem. And you do this while maintaining your mental focus on the issue. Then you use your fingertips, two fingertips like your index and middle finger, to tap 5 to 7 times on the 9 specific meridian points of the body. But the amazing thing about tapping is that this can work even if you only remember one of the points on the body and you only tap on that one point all the time. So in the next slide, here we go, we see all the points, the 9 points that we're talking about, and a lot of them are on the face, but there are some incognito points like the karate chop point. So if any of you can see me, you can just be tapping like this under the table, if you come across something that's really stressing you out. But what does it really do? Tapping changes DNA expression, hormone production, especially cortisol, which causes the stress, and brain activation. EFT tapping lowers the stress hormone cortisol by 43%. A landmark study published in 2012 in the prestigious Journal of Nervous and Mental Disease found that EFT tapping lowered cortisol significantly more than traditional talk therapy or resting. In a small pilot study on the physiological effect of EFT tapping, genetic expression changed in numerous genes implicated in overall health. Generally, immunity genes were up-regulated while inflammation genes were down-regulated. So a simple thing like tapping can help change your epigenetics and change your whole body and change what your illness and what you're facing, and of course change those feelings that tend to make you feel very stressed out. You take the threat out of the feeling or the negative emotion, that the negative thought. So then we go on to the next risk factor, which was antigens. Well, what do we mean by antigens? So there is overlap in things that we've talked about before, but antigens could be these gut microbiota. Those are the bacteria that live in your gut. Can be infections, can be stress, can be environmental toxins, and then can be antigens, again, food antigens. So these are things like specific proteins, for instance, casein in milk, gliadin in gluten, some fats, carbohydrates, things like histamine, salicylates, sulfites, and preservatives, MSG, solvents, dyes, emulsifiers, just to show you that we can be reacting to these, which are in our food. So I just said that in our guts we have bacteria that normally live there. We actually have bacteria that live in harmony with us on our skin, in our nose, in our mouth, everywhere. And so we also have bacteria in our gut. And the imbalance of the gut microbiota, a term called dysbiosis, plays a role in the triggering and perpetuation of autoimmune disease. So this is another way by which what you're eating and the role of your gut is affecting if you have autoimmune disease and its activity. 70% of all the lymphoid tissue in the body is in the gut. Now, lymphoid tissue has to do with your immune system and how your immune system is reacting to the information coming in from your gut. It's affected by diet, antibiotic use, excessive hygiene, stress, lack of connection to the natural world, and it drives low level chronic inflammation within the gut and systemically if you have dysbiosis, that is. The loss of diversity in the gut microbiota is associated with autoimmunity. So we have lots of different strains of bacteria that live in the gut. There can be good ones and there can be bad ones. And normally there is a harmony that exists between the good and the bad. And when you start to lose some of the bacteria because of the reasons we said, medication, stress, EMF, diet, you can have the bad bacteria remaining in there who are resistant to these things growing, proliferating, and causing problems for you, causing more inflammation. So how do you fix your microbiota? So feeding the microbiome, that is the bacteria in your gut, with prebiotics and a healthy anti-inflammatory diet is vital. Prebiotics feed those bacteria that live in the gut, and these beneficial bacteria ferment these non-digestible compounds, so basically that's plant material, and obtain energy through the degradation process to flourish in their activity and growth. In this way, prebiotics can influence the landscape of the gut microbiome and benefit the overall health through maintaining or increasing the population of health protective gut microbes. Also, you can take some probiotics and fermented foods. And probiotics are supplements that have a number of different strains in them. Preferably, you want it to be stable at room temperature, have at least 6 different strains, things like lactobacilli. And you would take them every day, and they have functions in the gut. Fermented foods have bacteria in them, and this is really good to eat at least once a day. A forkful of kimchi, sauerkraut, kuchela, kombucha, which is a fermented tea, to incorporate this part of a healthy lifestyle that supports your anti-inflammatory diet and helps you to fight your autoimmune disease. So we can't get here without talking about leaky gut. So leaky gut or intestinal permeability is a condition in which the gut lining is damaged. Large food particles, bacteria, and environmental toxins are able to seep into the bloodstream and cause problems in the body. The primed immune system can then cross into normal tissues and cause different forms of chronic disease and autoimmunity. A healthy gut works like a cheesecloth, normally allowing only nutrients, the end products of digestion, to go through, but keeping larger food particles and bacteria, yeast, and parasites out. But in a leaky gut, the tight junctions between the cells have been loosened so that now there are spaces, and undigested food particles and pathogens, which are like bacteria and other things, can get through and activate the immune system, causing inflammation and food sensitivities. So on the left, we have a picture of a healthy gut, and we can see those tight junctions and the normal response where there are no antibodies. And on the right, we can see leaky gut, where there are spaces between the enterocytes and compromised junctions, and we see the appearance of antibodies to food particles. Gliadin is the food antigen that induces intestinal permeability in healthy individuals, celiac patients, and patients with gluten sensitivity. So, gliadin is found in wheat. Gliadin is a component of gluten, which is in wheat. Elevated zonulin, indicating intestinal permeability, is common in patients with celiac disease. Numerous factors, psychological and physical stress, trauma, inflammation, etc., have also been demonstrated to increase intestinal permeability. Furthermore, it has been proposed that industrial food additives, emulsifiers, solvents, dyes, preservatives, nanoparticles, etc., are also capable of disrupting epithelial barrier function. That's what we can see on the screen, increasing intestinal permeability. So, for autoimmune disease initiation, there must be a disruption of the barrier, a triggering agent, and then an upregulation of the immune response. So, how can you heal your leaky gut? According to the Institute of Functional Medicine, we can take the 5R approach: to remove all problematic foods, to replace things like missing enzymes, to re-inoculate by rebuilding your gut flora, re-inoculating with probiotics, fermented foods, a variety of fruits and vegetables, because that's the only long-term way to reintroduce the diversity of bacteria into the gut. Repair using bone broth, collagen, L-glutamine, which is an amino acid, to rebalance. So lifestyle, meditation, work-life balance, adult play, reducing stress. So, and now we come to the next factor. This is number 4 out of the 5. Toxins. So, environmental agents have long been considered important for the development of autoimmunity. The list of non-infectious environmental factors that can trigger autoimmunity is vast and includes things like tobacco smoke, pharmaceuticals, estrogens, ultraviolet radiation, silica, solvents, dietary components, heavy metals, dental materials, vaccines, collagen or silicone implants, electromagnetic radiation, exo and endotoxins, and the sum total of environmental factors to which an individual is exposed over the course of their lifetime has been termed the exposome. So it's actually a thing now. In genetically susceptible individuals, so if you have the genes, any of these mechanisms, either individually or jointly, may have a potent effect on the development of immune reactivity, which may then lead to autoimmune disease. Exposure to environmental agents and subsequent oxidative stress may underlie many autoimmune conditions. If you have this high level of toxin exposure, you have to now know how to detoxify. What does that even mean? Detoxification
I will take all of that and throw
involves
it
the
over them this afternoon.
biotransformation and elimination of toxins
What do you want
or
with him?
toxicants. Biotransformation is defined as the body's response to and the alteration of toxic compounds, which alters the ability to eliminate those toxins. How can you support a detox lifestyle?
Because they don't lock.
You can do it with sleep and relaxation, stress management, resilience and relational health, avoidance of the environmental toxicants, controlled supported weight loss, I'm talking about weight loss because fat cells are actually storing toxins in your body. And if you lose a lot of weight very quickly, you can trigger a kind of storm where you're like very toxic because you've been unprepared for the sudden release of those toxins. Nutrition and hydration, exercise, massage, sauna, tai chi, yoga, optimal gut health, and supplements such as glutathione, methyl, sulfonyl, methane, and acetyl cysteine that really support your liver to get rid of these toxins and toxicants. So let's talk now about some detox dietary do's. So we need to avoid processed foods, farmed salmon, and larger fish. Avoid plastic water bottles, cling wrap, and canned foods because they line the cans with BPA. That BPA is awful. Avoid charred foods. Well, we all know, I think a lot of us already know about the dangers of charred meat. Eat local, seasonal, and organic whenever possible. You want to get organic, grass-fed, and free-range meats and eggs. Use glass, ceramic, or stainless steel for cooking and storage. Although there are many types of toxins and the way that toxin exposure looks is different, the body eliminates all the toxins through the same mechanisms. And for many of you, lifestyle changes will be the most important intervention for long-term health, whether that's by supporting biotransformation and elimination processes, or just by avoiding exposure to toxins. The last risk factor was infections. So microbes can also play a role in triggering or perpetuating autoimmunity. So some of us have gotten some of these as a child, like chicken pox or, and you overcome them and you're fine. But you can still have the virus in your body laying dormant. And when your immune system becomes compromised, like from a stressor or from stress itself, you can have these opportunistic infections that you've had all the time just suddenly reactivating and becoming a problem when you have autoimmune disease. Okay. So now, the fact that not all individuals with autoimmune associated HLA variants or other genomic antecedents, never complicated to mean what you have on your genes, develop autoimmune disease, suggests a combined genetic and environmental role. Once autoimmune disease is established, the triggering infection may be gone, but the immune cascade has started, and treating it may require more than optimizing host defenses or prescribing antimicrobial agents. So other things to consider when we're talking about infections that could be underlying autoimmunity would be bacterial, viral, parasitic, or even medication-induced infections. This is complicated looking, but I mean, if any of you see your disease there, you might see that it is actually associated with a specific kind of microbe or microbial infection. So something like thyroid autoimmunity or rheumatoid arthritis or having diabetes type 1 or Crohn's disease. So just for information's sake. But how can you treat these infections? I mean, we're talking about not necessarily using more Western medication on top of it all. So there are some natural options that we can turn to, things like allicin from garlic, berberine, caprylic acid connected with coconut oil, neem oil, oregano oil, and S. boulardii, which is a kind of probiotic bacteria that's good for you. And we can't talk about infections in the body without talking about your body's terrain, the integrity of your body's immune system. And is it going to overreact? Is it going to underreact? Or is the reaction of your immune system going to be just right? And so far, all the factors that we've been talking about will really influence your terrain. And so, if you have this healthy terrain, you don't have to worry about coming into contact with bacteria or any of those, because you are well equipped to fight that off and not succumb to it. And that's the same thing about, even if you had chickenpox as a child and you have that VZV in your nerve cells somewhere, you don't have to worry about it reactivating if your stress has been managed and you're eating a good diet and you're not exposed to a lot of toxins and you don't have leaky gut. But if you are engaging in behavior that make you stressed, then you will find that your body's terrain is going to be very welcoming to the reactivation of, for instance, that VZV, but now as herpes zoster, for instance. But there can be other things, and these are how autoimmunity can be given that driving force. So, how can we fix the terrain? The terrain is basically our bodies and our immune response. We need to address any other illnesses that we might have. We have to address the nutrient deficiencies. We need to improve our living conditions. We have to reduce inflammation, and we have to reduce stress. We need to remove the toxins like tobacco and excess alcohol. How can you actually support your immune system? We really need fatty acids like omega-3s. We need to take things like vitamin A and vitamin D, which are immunomodulators. And these are agents that induce, enhance, or suppress or regulate the immune response. We know about pharmaceutical immunomodulators like DMARDs and NSAIDs and like Olfen and statins and glucocorticoids like prednisone, which each affect the immune system. And in the body, we have natural immunomodulators like hormones and immunoglobulins, cytokines, and we have others too. So and just going back to fatty acids for 1 second, the omega-3 to 6 fatty acid balance with a high ratio's ability to support the immune system. And we can take anti-inflammatories in the form of botanicals, so things like boswellia, curcumin, ginger, green tea, nigella sativa, which is that black seed oil, can help support your immune system. So I would really like to leave you with hope and better health for the future. So again, a little reminder about how you can contact me and connect with me like we did at the beginning. So I'm on Instagram and Facebook. And I used to be a doctor who only treated your symptoms, but now I'm a practitioner who will support you in your journey to health and vitality. So I would like to say thank you so much for spending this time with me today and for your attention.